In 1986, DC Comics published the first issue of Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. The book would go on to achieve massive critical and financial acclaims, and would fundamentally reshape the face of not just Batman, but the comic book industry as a whole. The book would be praised for its darker, more realistic deconstruction of superheroes and the political satire and commentary found within. To this day, the book stands not only as an example of Frank Miller's skill as an artist and a writer, but to basically what comic books can do, the stories that can be told within that medium. Unfortunately, you know what they say about sequels. They never quite live up to the expectations set by the original. Such is the case with The Dark Knight Strikes Again, the 2001 sequel to The Dark Knight Returns. This book exists in much more infamy than its predecessor, where The Dark Knight Returns is seen as some of the best of Frank Miller's ability and some of the best of what comic books can achieve. The Dark Knight Strikes Again is seen as the opposite, as some of the worst of Miller's work and some of the worst of what comic books can be. Now, while I am not a fan of this story, I am an optimist, and I look for good where I can find it. And even in something like this, there's a nugget of a good idea in there. When interviewed about this book leading up to its release, Miller said that he really wanted to rebuild some of the heroes he had sort of torn down, and he said that he wanted to play with the entire toy box of the DC universe and not have to worry about things like what the Flash's wife was up to. This is an interesting idea, having the man who deconstructed these heroes reconstruct them in a way that sort of plays around with the grand mythos and mythology around them. Unfortunately, along the line, something just went wrong in that. Between the character depictions, the artwork, the writing, the story, it's all a bit of a mess. But that got me thinking, if I'm going to criticize it, what would I like out of it? What changes do I think would have made it into a better story, one that I personally would have enjoyed more? That's what I'm achieving here in this video. In this video, I will give you my rewrite, or redo, or my cut of it, or whatever you want to call it. This is Keenan Savage's rewrite of The Dark Knight Strikes Again. A quick disclaimer before going into this, I am not a professional comic book writer, and I am certainly nowhere near the same level as Frank Miller. Frank Miller is largely considered one of the best writers in the entire comic book industry. Whether or not you disagree with that, whatever, he's certainly one of the most popular, most influential, and I am nowhere near that level. I sincerely doubt that I could get anywhere near his level of skill or mastery. It's also worth noting that I'm doing all of this with hindsight. I know what did and didn't work from these books, or at least what is or isn't considered popular from them, and I'm also doing them without any sort of corporate oversight or, requirements. On a bit of a more dour note, the final issue in the original book was heavily impacted by the events of the September 11th terrorist attack. I can't imagine the emotions and feelings and pressures that Frank Miller must have felt doing this book and feeling that his third issue should be some sort of response to those attacks. I can't imagine what he was going through. I'm not going to try and put that in here. I'm just going to tell what I think is a good story and just go through that. I'm not even going to try and put myself in his shoes in those moments. With all those disclaimers out of the way, let's get into what I would want out of a Dark Knight sequel. And the first thing we have to establish is the art of the book. Art is such an important part of comic books. They're such a visual medium. It's such a symbiotic nature between the writing and the panel layout and the art. It's an absolute thing we have to address, especially when the art of the original book was such a sticking point for so many people. The Dark Knight Strikes Again has art by Frank Miller, colored in by his then wife Lynn Varley, and it is something. I know that Varley at the time was experimenting with different types of computer coloring softwares and things like that, and I appreciate that type of pioneering, but it just doesn't look very good. Now, to be fair, I don't think it's all her fault. I think some of it comes down to just some of the things Frank Miller draws in this book wouldn't have necessarily been appropriate or don't look right exactly, given the tone that he's trying to go for or the tone he's trying to follow up. The point is, the art just isn't great. So what kind of art would I want from this book? In the sequel, I would like it to utilize some storytelling principles the art used in the first book, but in reverse. When you read The Dark Knight Returns, you notice that the art gets sketchier, messier as it goes on. As you see The Legend of Batman deconstructed, you see the art get messier. If this book is supposed to rebuild the heroes Miller once deconstructed, then the art should start off messier, and as the book goes on, get cleaner and more kind of what you'd expect, so to speak. I can't think of a particular artist I personally would want to work on this book, but maybe that's something you guys are a little more opinionated on. Comment down below, who do you think should have done the art for this? Hey, Future Keenan, coming in here through editing real quick. I just wanted to clarify before we got into the actual rewrite itself that my version of the story will still contain a lot of elements and plot points from Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Strikes Again. It's not a wholly original work that I've created here, but, you know, I think it's just changed and tweaked and improved enough things, and I think it deviates enough as to where it's, you know, pretty good, where it does what I've set out to do here. Anyways, that's it. Bye. Issue 1. We open on the news. They report on various horrifying atrocities taking place across the world. Earth has become a much scarier, more hopeless place in the 5 years since Bruce Wayne supposedly passed away. Jimmy Olsen laments the loss of heroes, saying that they were a symbol for us to strive towards, an example to live by. His co-hosts in his program argue with him, saying that they were nothing more than violent brutes and that we're better off without them. But Jimmy Olsen laments, where are our heroes? We then cut to Ray Palmer. He's been stranded on a small island surrounded by horrifying large monsters for God knows how long now. He struggles against one of the Leviathans, trying to kill it for food, when all of a sudden something starts to happen. Ray Palmer starts growing and becoming larger. We see that the island he was stuck in was in fact nothing more than a petri dish, and the monsters that he was fighting, nothing more than bacteria and amoeba gone wild. We see that the person increasing his size is Carrie Kelly, now donning the mantle of Catgirl as she frees him. She's accompanied by a bunch of other characters, all dressed like young heroes, sidekicks, and whatnot. Staying in his minute size, Palmer is carried out by Catgirl and the sidekicks as they all fight their way out of this high-tech facility that's been holding him. In an explosive show of force, they escape. We then cut back to the media, who report on the very public rescue of Ray Palmer by these colorful costumed individuals. They also go over the fact that the President of the United States apparently is a hologram. This leads us then to our main villain, Lex Luthor, as he violently beats the technician in charge of keeping the president that Luthor's placed online. Luthor looks at the beaten and broken man and tells him he's fired as he's escorted out. Luthor then sees the news report about Ray Palmer's rescue, sending him even further into a rage. He looks down at his watch and hits a button on it, emitting an ultrasonic sound which quickly summons Superman. He gives Superman an ultimatum he's given him many times before. He can either find Catgirl and kill her, or else he and his associate Brainiac will destroy the bottled city of Kandor, the last remnants of Krypton. Begrudgingly, Superman leaves. We then cut to Catgirl as she enters the Batcave, the Atom and all the sidekicks in tow. They're greeted by Oliver Queen, aka the Green Arrow, who wears his classic comic book outfit and is equipped with a robotic arm replacing the one he lost so long ago. The sidekicks are all praised for their good performances or reamed out for their negative ones, as the Atom and Green Arrow catch back up. Suddenly, Superman rockets in at supersonic speed. He stares down Catgirl, telling her that he's been given an ultimatum to either kill her or watch Kandor be destroyed. The two stare one another down for a moment, before shaking hands as Catgirl exclaims, "If only Luthor knew the full picture." Oliver interjects as he has some opinions that he needs to share. He says, "I don't get it. We went from trying not to make noise to making as much noise as possible. Why not use Superman more? He's about as big and noisy as it gets." Superman retorts with the fact that he can't really do anything against Luthor while he holds Kandor hostage. And Kelly then tells him that when you're trying to hype people up for the main event, you put on the opening act first, before the main band. Kelly tells Superman to lie low while he goes on a secret mission, one that Batman wanted her to give to him herself. She tells him, and it clearly impacts Superman to his core. Whatever it is, it's deeply personal, and he goes off to take care of it. Oliver asks her what she'll be doing in the meantime. Getting the band back together, is all she says. We then get a sequence of Catgirl, the Atom, and the sidekicks all breaking the Flash out of a giant generator. The resulting media frenzy is all about superheroes. At first, it was just these new players like Catgirl and all her sidekicks, but now the Atom, the Flash, even reported sightings of Green Arrow are heroes back. We then see Lex Luthor back in his office as he smashes a TV in anger at the news. He starts thinking, who of all the heroes could be organizing this? Who was ever this crafty, this defiant, this... It's Batman. Luthor very quickly puts together that it's Batman and sends Gotham City into a state of martial law. The occupying army in Gotham starts harassing and accosting citizens, violently attacking people for even the smallest of things. What Luthor didn't count on was that Batman was waiting for something like this, as he sends in all the sidekicks, Catgirl, Green Arrow, Flash, Atom, and even himself as he makes his triumphant return in a bright blue and colorful outfit. He makes it perfectly clear, Gotham City, the people therein, are protected, not by the authority of the state, but by heroes. Luthor was hoping to draw out Batman, and he did. And boy, how he'll regret it. What Batman doesn't realize as he takes back the city is that there's a mysterious stranger watching him from afar. Issue 2. Superman floats above the sand of the beach, his back to the shore. He speaks to an unseen group about how much he appreciates their people, how their art is incredibly beautiful, how their science is centuries ahead of what the most brilliant minds on Earth are thinking of, how they preach peace and back it up with the strength of warriors. We then look out to see that he's surrounded by a group of Amazons on Paradise Island, all pointing spears at him. He then says that one of the most admirable traits among them is their ideology around bondage, as he puts out his hands and submits to the Amazons, asking to be taken to their queen. Back in Luthor's office, he's perplexed as he watches the news of Batman's army taking back Gotham City from the occupying forces. He tries to figure out why Batman would come back, how he faked his death. As he tries to answer these questions, the man who was watching Batman at the end of last issue bursts into his office, having fought his way through all of Luthor's security. He says that he's someone who can help him take out Batman and his resistance group, but on one condition: Catgirl is left to him. We then get a sequence of Batman and the Flash as they break Plastic Man out of a high-tech facility. We see the media reacting to all these heroes, to the resurgence of Plastic Man, Flash, to how popular heroes are being. Some think that they're merely criminals, that they need to either go back into hiding or go to jail, while others think they're champions of the people. Whatever people's opinions on them are is irrelevant, as a band is capitalizing off the popularity of superheroes, calling themselves the Super Chicks and styling themselves after classic superheroes. Bruce returns from his mission only to find Green Arrow in critical condition. He asks Catgirl what happened on their mission to recruit Martian Manhunter. Catgirl flashes back, talking about how when they tried to recruit him, he was assassinated by the man Luthor hired. Catgirl and Arrow went to fight him, but he easily dispatched of Oliver. While Catgirl fought against him, he seemed to know a lot about Bruce and Batman and warned her of the dangers of working with him. Whoever he is, he has a very personal grudge with Bruce. Bruce ponders who this new character could be, as he wonders what his next move should be. Meanwhile, on Themyscira, Superman speaks with the Queen of Paradise Island, Diana Prince, Wonder Woman. She says that Clark knows that no man is allowed on Paradise Island, to which he then tells her that technically he's not on it, he's floating above it. The two argue about why he's here, as he tries to recruit her to join Batman in his crusade. Wonder Woman says that man's world is lost, has been, and always will be. She has utterly lost hope in our people. As Superman's about to leave, Wonder Woman tells him to stop, saying that his daughter, Laura, would love to meet him. Clark goes and meets with his teenage daughter. Because she's been on Paradise Island to stay away from Luthor her whole life, she's never gotten to meet him, and this is the first time the two talk. Laura has questions about her powers and how to use them, what her place in this world should be. Clark tries to explain for a while, but finds it hard to put into words. He decides that he and Laura should go for a fly. The two of them fly around the world at supersonic speed to avoid detection. They observe the good in humanity, they observe the bad in it, and where they can, they help out. It's a sweet moment between father and daughter. The two rest for a moment on top of Mount Everest. All of a sudden, though, a hologram of Brainiac beams down, telling Superman that Mr. Luthor demands to see him immediately, and to bring his daughter, who he's been keeping from both of them. Back in Gotham, a Super Chicks concert is being shut down by the authorities. Batman remarks how Kelly knew this would happen, and how she had the perfect idea to come in and save the day here. He thinks about how much she's become like him. For a moment he's proud, and for a moment he feels ashamed of himself. But the superheroes jump in, saving the Super Chicks concert and fighting off the authorities. Batman makes a rallying cry to fight back against those in power, when all of a sudden the mysterious stranger Luthor hired shows back up again and starts fighting Batman. Just like Carrie said, he seems to know a lot about Bruce and has a very personal vendetta against him. The fight is very evenly matched, with the stranger even outperforming Batman. But as Batman manages to turn the fight back in his favor, the stranger gives an order to his backup. He tells them to start opening fire on the civilians in the concert. Our heroes start saving people, but civilians are getting hurt. The stranger gives Batman an ultimatum: either come with him or watch all the people here die. At the end of the book, Batman surrenders. Issue 3, the finale. Luthor wails on a defenseless Dark Knight tied up in his office. While disappointed that the stranger didn't bring in more heroes, he doesn't really care. He got the only one that truly mattered. Batman goads Luthor, essentially telling him the more pressure he puts on people, the more people will fight back against him. Luthor's only retort is to tell Batman that he should have stayed dead. We see the media's reaction to the Super Chicks incident and some other things, before going back to the Batcave, where all the heroes and sidekicks therein feel utterly defeated. Catgirl, however, rallies them out of this funk, telling them that they need to get out there and get to work. Back in Luthor's office, he asks, legitimately, why didn't he stay dead? He could have lived a pretty happy, quiet life if he just let the legend of the Batman die. Bruce responds, saying that it was only a little while after he went into hiding. The new Gotham DA was going to go after a chemical factory for their lack of safety precautions. However, the DA and his wife were each gunned down by an unknown assailant, leaving their daughter orphaned. Quietly, Bruce and Oliver gathered all the evidence they needed to implicate the chemical factory in hiring the Trigger Man. However, once all the news was out in the open, the company was pardoned by the United States government, saying that they were a subsidiary of LexCorp, a company with many government contracts. Not too long after this, the child would commit suicide. Bruce saw that being quiet didn't change anything, and that without the legend of the Batman, there was nothing to give people hope. That people needed something to look up to and be inspired by. It's about at this time that Superman and Laura show up at Lex's office. Lex gives Superman a choice. Either he can let Brainiac destroy the hundreds of lives inside of Kandor as punishment for disobeying his orders, or he can kill Batman in a 1-to-1 fight, finishing the job he failed to do in the first book. Luthor turns on a pair of red solar lights as Batman and Superman get ready for round 2. Meanwhile in Gotham, Catgirl and the other heroes fight against Luthor's forces as they try to take control back over the city. They raise as much hell as humanly possible. As the battle rages, the stranger yet again shows up, ready for a 1-to-1 fight with Catgirl. Meanwhile, back in Luthor's office, a depowered Superman fights against Batman, as Luthor and Brainiac split a popcorn as they watch their entertainment. Suddenly, however, the bottled city of Kandor, sitting next to Brainiac, begins to disappear. As Luthor and Brainiac scramble to find out what's happening, Batman feels free to explain to them that Ray Palmer hitched a ride in his ear canal and took the bottled city of Kandor, freeing Superman from their slavery. He tells the two of them that Palmer also put a virus into Luthor's computer, one that by now should give Batman full control over the building's security. He hits a button on his belt, causing the shutters in the room to fly open, flooding the room with yellow sunlight, repowering Superman. The two quickly go out of their way to tie up Brainiac and Luthor. Bruce notes that the information on Luthor's hard drive should be more than enough to put him away for several lifetimes. Brainiac applauds Batman's ingenuity and underhandedness, as he then seems to go limp. Superman remarks that his consciousness has just transferred to another one of his bodies, an old trick he used to play all the time. Suddenly, Brainiac's ship descends from the skies, turning into a giant mechanized horror that begins to attack Metropolis. Superman asks Batman what their plan is, and Batman says simple: it's a job, not just for Superman, but for the Justice League. Batman asks the Atom if he ever got the Watchtower's teleportation system back up and running. He says he did, and Batman instructs him to teleport all the main Leaguers they've recruited to Metropolis right now. Batman, Superman, Green Arrow, Flash, the Atom, and Plastic Man all jump into action, with Laura following behind them to help her dad in any way she can. Superman tells her and the Flash to get as many people out of the city as possible while the rest of them fight off the giant mechanized behemoth. The Atom grows ginormous to fight the monster one-on-one, while the rest of the League members attack it at various other critical points. Hoping to distract the smaller League members from it, Brainiac summons an army of androids, not just in Metropolis, but all over the world. Back in Gotham, Catgirl's fight with the Stranger is interrupted as a Brainiac android assaults her. However, as she struggles against it, the Stranger pulls it off of her and destroys it. The two put aside their conflict and begin fighting against the army together, side by side. As they fight together, the Stranger explains that he never wanted to hurt her. He sees her and all the other sidekicks as merely another victim of Bruce Wayne, of Batman's never-ending crusade against evil. He criticizes Batman and the other heroes for romanticizing their glory days of old, when in reality they came with a lot of harsh consequences for a lot of people around them. As they fight, though, it's obvious that the Stranger is beginning to wear out as he starts getting slower and slower, taking more hits from the Brainiac androids, which start to overwhelm him and the army of sidekicks. Things aren't going great in Metropolis either, as most of the League is occupied fighting Brainiac's army, leaving only Superman and the Atom to face off against the actual mechanized monster. As the Atom starts to lose in his fight against Brainiac, though, a bolt of lightning strikes, going right through Brainiac's chest. Superman looks up to see Wonder Woman, flying on a large Pegasus throwing lightning bolts. She stares at Clark and simply asks him, "Where is our daughter?" Laura flies in to hug her mother. The family of three share a moment together before re-entering the fray, and together, the Justice League defeat Brainiac, shutting down all of his robots. As the League celebrates their victory, Bruce gets a call from Carrie. She says it's an emergency and that he's needed now. Bruce has the Flash zip him back over to Gotham. When he gets there, though, he sees that Carrie is fine. All the Brainiac androids in Gotham shut down when Brainiac was destroyed, just like the ones in Metropolis. What she wants him there for is the death of the Stranger. Bruce kneels down and removes the Stranger's mask to see it was Dick Grayson all along. The original Robin. Dick felt that being Batman's sidekick robbed him of a normal life. The anger was only magnified when Jason died. And all these years later, for Bruce to come back, to recruit another Robin, to recruit an army of sidekicks, it was all too much for him, and he knew he needed to shut it down, to end the cycle of Batman and his sidekicks. Bruce apologizes to Dick, saying he never meant to hurt him, to hurt anyone. Bruce says that he only ever wanted to do something good, and looking out at all the people of Gotham, people who had joy in Carrie in her fight against the Authority, he thinks he might have done something good, but he does recognize that it all came at a cost, as he looks down at the man he considers his son, as the life fades from his eyes. The last moments of the dynamic duo. We then see a final news broadcast talking about people all over the world inspired by the Justice League to fight back against Brainiac's androids in their darkest hour. Bruce looks over at the new Justice League he's formed, one with all the old members of the Super Chicks, and of course Catgirl on them. He thinks about what a new age of heroes this will be. He hopes that they won't make the mistakes the older generation did. He hopes that they'll be better than they ever were. He looks at Carrie, wondering if he's done the right thing or not. He figures only the future will tell. He then thinks about how that future belongs to her, and he feels a little bit better about everything. So yeah, that is it. That is my rewrite of Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Strikes Again. Yes, I landed on rewrite. It feels the most appropriate wording out of all the ones here. Again, to be perfectly clear, I don't want to make it seem like I'm spiteful against Frank Miller, or that I think I could actually do better than him. Frank Miller is probably one of my all-time favorite writers. I know he's made some very dicey stuff, to say the least, but look, when the man cooks, he cooks, alright? But hopefully, in the end, my rendition of his story has produced something that you guys like, something that sort of lifts these heroes out of their deconstruction and raises them to being these godlike beings for us to aspire to. I also wanted to make sure that while it did praise these characters and reconstruct them, it also didn't totally ignore some of the deconstruction done, and basically was able to use it to say, hey, the glory days are like nice to look back at, but like recognize they were not great for everyone, necessarily. But yeah, I think it was a pretty good story. Not perfect to say the least, but you know, enjoyable. But yeah, I am really excited to be here on YouTube making videos. If you want videos of mine that come out on a bit of a more regular basis, on a bit of a more daily basis, go over to TikTok. You can find me at the exact same username here on YouTube, KeenanSavage11. I post things pretty regularly there. But yeah, I'm excited to also be doubling down and posting things here as well. The videos here on YouTube will be like this one, you know, longer than my TikToks anyways, and we'll have a little bit more editing and things like that to them. Meanwhile, the TikTok ones, you know, more daily content, a little quicker, a little cheaper, a little easier, but hey, still good, still great, nonetheless. But yeah, I hope you guys like my stuff. I hope you like this video, and I hope you subscribe to this YouTube channel. KeenanSavage11, I'll see you guys next time.